Hi, and thanks for joining us in the panel discussion, Look Ahead, Insights for Retailers and Consumer Brands in the Post-COVID World. My name is Jennifer Acevedo, and I'm the editor-in-chief and associate publisher of BMSD Magazine. BMSD, or Visual Merchandising for Design, is a leading publication covering the art and science of visual merchandising and retail design and architecture.
And I'm Linda Casey, editor-in-chief of Brand Experience Packaging Magazine. BXP is the only publication that celebrates brand package design as a strategic marketing competence in the omni-channel path to purchase.
I'd like to say a big thank you to our sponsors first, who make conversations like this possible and possible. Thank you to Acrylic Source, Build, COG, In Retail Solutions, Lenron, Moss, and Uber for your support of this and other important discussions. Linda?
Before we start, we have a few housekeeping notes. We have some downloads available, so at the bottom of your screen, you should have a resource tab. You can click on that and download some great little resources for you after the event. This is a live event, so with live events, we have problems as far as it's maybe your internet signal isn't that great, and there's image pixelization or the audio stuttering. And just know that if for some reason the connection isn't strong, we will have this event. It's being recorded. So we'll have it available on demand approximately 1 hour after the event is finished. So just, if you have any questions, just know that you'll be able to get this information. You can also send any technical questions to our webinar producer, Christine Yancey, via the Q&A widget, which should be up on your screen, which Jen will tell you all about.
That sounds like my cue. So at the end of this presentation, we're going to leave about 15 minutes for question and answers from the audience. The panelists will be available to answer. As Linda mentioned, you'll see at the bottom of your screen a little thought bubble, which is our Q&A section. If you just click on that, and I think it should automatically be open for you at this point. Just type in your question. We can see those. If you have a specific person that you'd like to answer a question, feel free to put their name in there, or if you'd like the entire panel, just let us know what you're thinking and what you want answers to, and we'll do our best to answer. Linda?
And at this time, we'd like to invite our panel to introduce themselves. So panel, please introduce yourselves to the audience.
Hi, I'm Alain Demorier. I'm the Sales and Marketing Director for EMEA at Westwin, and Westwin used to be Microsoft China.
Hello, I'm Amanda Sarver with the Kroger Company. I'm a Senior Interior Designer with them.
And our next speaker will be David.
Go ahead, JP.
Yeah, go ahead. I think we lost David.
We did.
Hi, I'm Jean-Pierre Lacroix, president of SLD.
Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. I'm Maria Arbulescu, Store Planning Manager at Walgreens.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, panel. And I'm just going to go ahead and introduce David, because I'm sure David's going to try to call back in or try to connect again. And when his connection is back up and running, that he'll join in the conversation. So David Sidnick is an old friend of mine. He is just he's one awesome guy. He used to build wells around the world and help people get fresh water. So he's just an amazing person. But right now he is the CEO of Soapbox Soaps. So he is a major personal care company that obviously is has a product that is in high demand during this time. So welcome to all of our panel, and we'll be welcoming David back later. And I guess we'll start with our first question. So our first question goes to you, Alan. And the question is, what's happening in the US, in Europe, in China? What's going on with the pandemic and the shopping environment?
Thanks, Linda. So I think I'm going to talk about China. So I touched on that Westwin is a Chinese company. So I think let's for me, I'll stick with China if that's okay. So China, obviously, it's kind of coming out the end of COVID-19. So obviously, it's where it originated, and they've kind of gone through the doldrums, and they're seeing the green roots of recovery. With regard to kind of Western brands, Western stores, just a handful. So Apple, Nike, Adidas, Starbucks stores, they are all open now. In fact, Starbucks, 85% of their stores were open at February end. So that was, 3 months ago. So they're very much coming out of the troubles. There are about 4,200 Starbucks stores in China. And a fun fact that I like to throw out at these sort of things, there's a new Starbucks that opens up in China every 15 hours, which is pretty incredible. So a very important market for Starbucks. I think the one thing that probably highlights China's recovery, particular, is the official reopening of Disneyland Shanghai. So that actually happened yesterday. They've capped some of the number of people that can go into the park. But I think the fact that, with regard to Chinese anyway, that their leisure facilities, these massive tourist institutes, are reopening, is really testament to how they've controlled the virus, and very much a roadmap for how, hopefully, the West is a month or two behind, but certainly coming out of it too.
Wonderful. And I'd like to invite JP to kind of build on that. I know that you've actually also noticed that there's been some consumer behaviors changing, and that you've kind of looked into how consumers are feeling right now.
Yeah, thank you very much, Linda. Yes, we've conducted actually 3 major studies, with a 4th one right now in market. So the first study was the banking industry, that want to find out what's impacting the banking consumer, what's their attitudes and behaviors. And then 3 weeks later, we conducted a food service study on COVID-19. And then we just finished a CPG study, consumer packaged goods study, understanding, what are the attitudes and shifts and behaviors. And that just came out of Philly yesterday. And then we're doing a retail study at the end of the week to understand retailers, fast retailers and general merchandise retailers. What's the attitude? Well, I'm going to share with you some common threads. One of them is that when you look at the marketplace, you need to look at the marketplace and consumer behavior based on one key dynamic. Are they optimistic about the outcome of this pandemic, or are they pessimistic about the outcome of this pandemic? Because those behaviors, those attitudes have huge implications on how they buy, their level of brand loyalty. And then the other dynamic is obviously the vulnerability age, so younger consumers versus older consumers. And some key insights that are common across is that the anxiety level is increasing, actually not decreasing. You'd expect with the duration of this pandemic and the opening of markets, the consumers will actually be more optimistic, but we're seeing actually a significant rise. And I think the underlying factor is economic impact of the pandemic. We're seeing the first wave of impact was health and well-being. And what we're seeing now is the second wave is not the second wave of pandemic, it's the second wave, the financial impact of people unemployed. And I think retailers and CPG brands really need to pay close attention to that second financial wave, because it has a huge impact on purchase behaviors and purchase dynamics. And again, we're fortunate. We're going to be releasing the CPG study next week on the 21st with Jerry Brownstein from BXP. So we're excited about that. But you can also go to our website and download the banking one and the food service and research studies. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, JP. And Alan, I'm going to go back to you because I know that you, before we got onto this event and before we talked, you had some really good insights about how consumers are thinking about the shopping environment.
Yeah, so from a consumer perspective, yeah, I mean, there's a shifting attitude, I think, to becoming more safety conscious. So I think that's a global fact. In the UK, we have, I'm in the UK, so we have social distancing rules, and I think touching on JP's insights into consumer mentality and psychology, it's very much about creating a shopping experience that imbues health and safety above all else. It's very important that retail goes back to where it once was. In China, if we look at China, the rules are civilized behavior rules, and they're very much enforced. They're very much become a matter of everyday life. Obviously, China and in particular Taiwan had almost not a practice, that's probably not the right word, but I'll say practice of this with SARS, so about 8 years ago. So the everyday occurrence of wearing a face mask is something that they've already been through. And with regard to the social distancing, the civilized behaviour rules, this is something that there's been practice for in China. It's how the retail experience better reflects the new, not desperately, but need for a place of where health and safety is put above all else. So I summarise by saying that the consumer expectation is that, yes, they want to return to shopping malls. They want to go back into shops to buy the goods that they're used to. They don't want to have to survive buying everything on e-commerce. And I'm sure we'll touch on some of the burgeoning facts of how e-commerce has kind of taken up the mantle. But, the shopping experience must be very mindful of health and safety now and for the foreseeable anyway.
Can I jump in just to build on Alan's point? So one of the questions we asked as part of our study is, post-pandemic, where are you going to spend your money coming out of post-pandemic from a experience standpoint? And what was insightful, and this was part of the food service study we conducted, is that people want to go back to shopping in malls. The number one activity that people wanted to do coming out of the post-pandemic was going to retail stores and shopping. Right. At the bottom of the list was business travel and business meetings. So we can see a significant lag on behaviors of people wanting to go to business meetings. So my sister works for IBM, and they have a policy that they will only have face-to-face meetings in 2021. So you can see that consumers crave for those experiences. So food service will do very well. The Starbuckses and the fast casual and the casual dining, they'll do well, but anything to do with business is going to lag. So great insight, building on Alan's point.
JP, thanks. And I noticed that both you and Alan mentioned the importance of consumer attitude, whether it's that they're optimistic or pessimistic about how we're coming out of the pandemic, or in Alan's case, mentioning how important safety and security are going to be. And one of the things I've heard is that whereas normally brands, current modern brands spend a lot of their time, if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we tended to spend a lot of time at the top, self-actualization, with safety and security being sort of the bottom of that pyramid. And it seems as if that's been kind of turned on its head now with safety, security, and just feeling that level of trust with our brands and retailers. Would you guys say that that's a fair assessment?
Yeah, absolutely. When we did the assessment, we assessed 48 drivers of behavior, and what we found out is they clustered in 4 groups. The key driver is safety, like distancing, taking care of your employees, that they're safe. That if they're sick, they're not going to show up for work, which is a big issue in the U.S. Interesting, the second most important dynamic on brand loyalty and behavior was actually how these brands supported the community during the pandemic. So if you're not engaged in supporting your local community, if you're a brand, a retail brand or CPG brand, you're not engaged, watch out. because that's a key indicator of what the loyalty level will be. And then the next one was what support from a communication standpoint, understanding how to protect themselves during the pandemic. At the bottom was value, promotions, incentives. And so you can see that social responsibility and safety, being part of the belonging experience and being protected are really, really important now and post-pandemic.
Excellent, JP. Thanks so much. I think now is a perfect segue to bring in our two store designers and talk a little bit about social distancing, which is becoming a reality. More and more consumers are going to be looking not only to comply with these regulations as they are in different states, but also it seems like already you're hearing in some of the advertising and promotion about these contactless or contact-free experiences. I wanted to ask, Amanda, I'll start with you if you don't mind. What types of devices are you guys using in the way of like wayfinding, navigation, ways to educate the shopper in your stores about this new normal that we're living with?
Yeah, it's been pretty evident. I think we've done a pretty good job via social media and advertising, kind of telling what that safety is really our primary concern for customers and associates. So one of the things we've done in stores is obviously the floor stickers. We have those applied at the beginning of the check stands. So that kind of gives people a stopping point and to kind of remind them of the social distancing. And also another thing that we are piloting in a few stores is a Scan Bag Go app where you can actually use your iPhone or your Android, any of your phone, to actually scan and purchase your items via your phone. Now that's only been tested in a few stores, but I can see that once we're successful at that, rolling that out as again another kind of contactless or very minimal contact within a store, just so to keep safe distances as well. And we are also exploring the idea, I'm sure it's been in the media as well, as possibly testing a one-way aisles within our stores as a way to kind of limit the amount of traffic and the back and forth and the passing and the crossing within our stores. So that is something that we are looking into and looking at testing as well.
That app that you mentioned, is that something that you guys were already working on just in anticipation of where trends were going, or?
Yes, exactly. It's been around for a while, but in all honesty, it was a little archaic. It was an additional device you carried around, which especially during this pandemic, no one wants to touch things more than they have to. So it was kind of a nice surprise that we actually got it now linked up to iPhones and cell phones. So that'll be another kind of the next evolution of kind of touchless, contactless purchasing.
Awesome. Very cool. Maria, I'm going to ask you the same question. Just what types of the devices are you using in store to kind of communicate this new normal, this new way of shopping behavior to your customers at Walgreens?
Yeah, for sure. So I will start, like Amanda said, keeping our team members and customers healthy and safe is definitely our priority now more than ever. So we had to adjust pretty quickly and make some changes in the store to comply with the CDC guidelines while keeping the stores open. So a few things. We started with the blue tape on the floor like other retailers did, and to show social distancing marks throughout the store. Right now, we also have like Kroger social distancing lines indicated with decals and signage that start 6 feet apart from checkout and pharmacy counters, and is also marked in 6-foot increments to indicate where customers and also patients should stand while waiting. We installed plexiglass shields, checkout and service counters. We also have in-store audio messaging to just remind everyone about social distancing, and also proper signage throughout the store. Actually, a lot of signage, I would say, to ensure both employees and customers know what's expected. Right now, our team members in the store and also customers entering the store are required to wear a mask, which I think it's a very good educational thing for both employees and customers. There's a new front door signage instructing customers on the face cover requirement. We also reduced the number of photo kiosks available in the store, again, to ensure customers maintain that social distance. And additionally, we have a lot of tools and resources available online on Walgreens.com, or on there's a new feature, Walgreens Find Care, which is also available on the mobile app. So a lot of education, and again, in the store we did a lot of changes, I would say pretty much on the fly, to make sure the stores are safe for both customers and employees.
Absolutely, and you hit on an excellent point there, which is more distance between shoppers means less space for things like fixturing and in-store promotions and merchandise and all those things that go into a store. How is it that you guys are addressing that? Maria, if you don't mind, I'll kick that back to you.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm not sure if everybody knows this, but a typical Walgreens store is approximately 14,000 square feet. So we are a convenience store. It's not as big as Kroger, but pretty big. And the sales floor, the sales area is about 11,000 square feet. So I would say if we continue to apply the new occupancy limit guidelines, I think the fixture layout and the aisle spacing should be fine the way they are right now. I mean, they are pretty spacious right now, and I would say most Walgreens stores should be fine. And personally, I don't think I've seen any Walgreens stores where customers had to wait outside to get in the store. Well, I live in a suburban area, and I have quite a few Walgreens stores nearby, so that's probably a reason. But I do think that, just maintaining that or applying that rule, I think will be helpful if we need to. And I would say that would be more for urban or high traffic areas. But most of our stores shouldn't have that issue. Also, I would say another solution to kind of keep that balance will be technology. So I know technology went pretty far lately and pretty fast, and it looks like customers are learning how to use it very quickly. We've seen a high increase in e-commerce orders. Walgreens also just announced a new digital service, ordering online and picking up at the pharmacy drive-thru, which I think adds a lot of convenience or additional convenience. Also, there's an assortment of more than 100 items, and those are household goods and health items that customers can pick from. So the selection was really made for the current situation, but I do see a benefit of this type of service and maybe other similar services in the future. So again, I think having that both physical and digital shopping experience will be good for now and also the future.
Absolutely. And Amanda, can I ask you the same question? Just how are you guys finding that balance between having to comply with, these social distancing requirements and maximizing your floor space, which is always at a demand anyway?
Sure. Yeah. So over the years, we've expanded aisles. And to Maria's point as well, they're pretty wide to begin with. So we haven't really noticed a lot of congestion as far as in the the actual aisles, but I know that they are really starting to look at some of our 8451 data and really starting to look at what really is merchandise is selling. You know, what in this a crisis like this, what really are people buying? Is it more just needs? What's kind of driving their shopping? So I know with looking at all of that data, I really think that moving forward, you might see, you know, a little more detail as to what we really are merchandising in the store. You know, we are a huge store. I mean, our new stores are 120,000, 23,000 square foot stores. So, you know, that kind of product mix, I could see us kind of shifting more to access instead of excess of products and merchandise. But as far as our layout, you know, I think that the way we generally kind of been designing our stores anyways have kind of given a lot to flow and, you know, with shopping carts and allowing for the, you know, one way and, you know, dual way traffic. So I kind of think that that's not an issue.
Yeah, curation sounds like a really good way to address this. JP, I know you had some thoughts on this as well. Please go ahead.
Yes, so a couple of just insights, you know, as we look at these multiple studies and where they connect the dots. Number one is, you know, people are asking, will the store design change and, you know, will the layouts change? The reality is the more intimate the space, the more it's going to have to change due to social distancing. But the big changes are going to happen in the sales choreography and the customer journey. So what we saw in the banking study is consumers, and especially the more vulnerable older consumers, actually moving towards online banking, something they kind of hesitated or were reluctant to use. But we saw that behavior due to telephone customer line activities increasing dramatically, because as they were learning how to use their online platform, they're actually calling in for explaining how to use it. That's number one. I think that that's an important factor, that the stores won't change. It's the use of technology and the customer journey that's going to shift. The other thing I think it's really important is that what the pandemic has done is accelerated some of these behaviors that were already established before the pandemic. And so BOPIS, you know, the idea of ordering online and picking up at the store, you know, consumers were reluctant to do that. But with the pandemic, they now feel very comfortable, and it becomes a ritualistic habit that it's going to be hard to break once the pandemic subsides and we're post-pandemic. And so you're going to see some of these behaviors that were really forced upon the customer are going to maintain themselves. And I think that that's a really important thing to understand. You also need to, if you're a CPG brand and if you're a Kroger's or Walgreens, you also need to understand that during the pandemic, people were hoarding. They were pantry loading, right? And people were stockpiling a lot of products. I mean, our CPG clients have had the best years. I think P&G said the best quarter in the history of the company was this last quarter. And so consumers were loading up. You need to understand when they decelerate, that's going to have a huge impact on the supply chain and what consumers want to buy. And then the last insight is, if you're a supermarket chain, we're doing research again on food service, 10% of consumers said they bought their hot meal from a supermarket, which tells you that those meal replacement strategies that the grocery stores were struggling with is finally taking hold. And you're going to see that segment and that behavior blossom post-pandemic. So those are just some of the insights in our studies, and there's lots more.
Thanks so much, JP. And Elaine, I know you had some thoughts on this as well. Would you share?
Yeah, so I think, you know, in many ways, China can be seen as innovative, particularly with regard to kind of the shift to digital and retail. I wanted to kind of pull out an example from Alibaba. So they launched their Hema stores actually 4 years ago now, so 2 years before Amazon Go stores launched. The Hema store is kind of a new concept in retail, whereby you take an existing space and through the use of amplified technology, you improve the customer experience and overall sales. with regard to kind of the Hema store, so that there's 150 currently in China. Actually, during the pandemic, they announced that they're going to double the number of stores this year. So if there is a success story to be had, I think you could probably draw an example here. There's three sort of levels to the Hema store, three sort of principles to it. One is it's a place to shop. Two, it doubles as a distribution center. And three is the restaurant experience, which is very much an experiential success. The store is outlaid with tech from ear to ear. So you go in, you scan barcodes for product reviews. Within that digital signage, you get when the item was delivered to the store. You find out everything about how it's sourced. So using tech to really amplify the consumer understanding. From the distribution element, so if you live within 3 kilometers of a Hema store, you're guaranteed delivery in 30 minutes. Now, I know that isn't possible currently everywhere, but it's certainly something to consider, moving forward. There's no cashiers, so there's no. There are workers there running around trying to source the delivery aspects, and then the restaurant element is the experiential part of it. So you scan your app, scan your QR, you get your table allocated, the payment done in the app, and all the food is delivered by robots. Unless it's soup, then you need a waiter or waitress. So it's very much taking the concept of retail and seeing how tech can improve it going forward. I really think Hema is a great example or a success story that is still seeing success during where we are now, and I think it's certainly something to emulate for other retail brands.
Awesome, Alan. And I love the fact that you all, the three of you, Alan, Amanda, Maria, all talk about this kind of technical, physical world kind of colliding. And, we are looking at it and definitely seeing a lot more technology and people being forced to use technology to kind of to build on a point that JP made. And it might become a habit that they have afterwards with the self-checkout and this contactless payment. Like that whole idea of having this this physical digital combination at the store experience happening more and more. So we would love to hear more, about, do you think that it's going to further, stores like Hannah, are they going to be an example to other stores? Do you expect more of this around the world? And I'd also love for folks to kind of weigh in on whether they're seeing it change the way that things are being designed, whether it's, signage in the stores or package design so that they're easy to help people self-check out.
Yeah, so I think to come back to you on that, China was very much cashless prior to the pandemic. So 83% of retail transactions took place on the mobile anyway. So it's an ecosystem that's dominated by two companies, Alibaba, Alipay, and Tencent's WeChat Pay. They own 93% of the market of mobile payments between them. So, I mean, China's pretty much always been cashless. They kind of miss the whole bank card thing that's still very much ubiquitous in the West. And I think, when you go into a store and you buy something, most of the time you'll do it with QR codes, facial recognition. So face scanning is becoming more ubiquitous. And I was at a conference a couple of years ago. It was a banking conference talking about, how amenable to face scanning will the West be? And yes, there's going to be a pushback on privacy, but it's a very efficient way of making a payment, just buying things with your face. So if you go to any vending machine in China, you buy a can of Coke using your face. So, this is, I think it's a good example of how technology can really improve payment, can improve the shopping experience, can improve the efficiency of shopping. And it doesn't mean just because, e-commerce is such a ballooning industry, it doesn't mean that it's to the detriment of the retail one. I think the two can work hand in hand, and with the right integration of tech solutions out of China, out of the West, and we can improve the retail experience for the world.
Wonderful, thank you, Al. So, Ellen, I really think that this whole idea of technology and getting people used to using that device in store is really going to help launch some of the other experiences that we could have in the retail store. And I'd love to hear from some of our other panelists, perhaps on how they're looking at using that technology and using, as Kroger, Walgreens, or Soapbox Soaps, using this technology to perhaps change that experience in store and looking at it more strongly now that we know that people will be more used to and more accustomed to using the device inside the store.
Yeah, I think so. Like I had mentioned earlier, we're testing the Scan Bag Go app, and, we're really ramping up our delivery services and our pickup locations. So I think we're just, really looking at trying to reach every customer as far as how they want to shop and how they feel comfortable shopping, whether it is just getting delivery shipped home, or if it's getting, driving to the store and picking them up, or, physically being in the store. So we're really trying to get a good handle on actually encompassing all of that to meet all of the customers' different needs, depending on, the day. Some days people want to go in the store, some day they may want it delivered, or someday they might want it pick up. So just being able to kind of have all of those options for customers is what we're really kind of focusing on.
Great. Thank you so much, Amanda. And I'd love to build on this a little bit more, but I know that we're running close on time. So I'm going to throw it to Jen for the next question.
Great. Thanks, Linda. Retailers have adapted very, very quickly to offer shoppers a number of low or no contact experiences like BOPIS, or buy online, pickup in store, delivery, lockers, pickup areas. In fact, I actually saw a statistic from Adobe Analytics just today that said that the number of buy online, pickup in-store orders, which would include curbside pickup, rose 208% year over year during the first 20 days of April. So that's a pretty strong statistic there. I wanted to ask, JP, we can start with you. Do you think services like these are here to stay?
Oh, absolutely. And there's more to come. I mean, what we haven't layered in here is 5G network. And what people don't realize is 5G is going to replace the computing power of your phone. So you imagine your wireless device now, how thick it is. It's going to be paper thin, because the actual processing power will actually be on a bunch of computers, hardwired on poles. And so it's going to change everything from biometric measurement to how we buy to how we shop. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. And so the pandemic has changed our behaviors. It's actually accelerated those. And so BOPIS and online shopping has grown dramatically. And we will see that that's not going to go away, because these habits are fostered over periods of months. And people who are reluctant are seeing how easy it is to shop that way. But you're going to see a lot of changes in the built environment, because that's not going away. So if you're a retailer, market share, you grow market share and profits through your bricks and mortar. If you're a bank, the same way. And so you're just going to get smarter and more efficient. So think of your mobile app. Let's say you're wanting to buy a suit, like Tip Top Tailors, one of the brands we transformed. You're going to make an appointment now to go to that store, because you're going to be concerned about how many people are in that store. But when you're in that store and you made that appointment, that service level will be exceptionally high. So you're going to see a whole new level of what we call sales choreography happening in the bricks and mortar environment that's going to elevate the customer experience. And that's to ensure that that bricks and mortar channel remains relevant. So you're going to see a lot of these changes happening.
Excellent. Alain, I'm curious, do you have any thoughts on this as well? Perhaps the international perspective?
Yeah, so I'll just pick up on JP's point on 5G. So yeah, it's a game changer. It's the blending of the physical and digital worlds, and I think only to the benefit of all considered. With regard to kind of what 5G will enable with regard to the retail space is, that drive towards the experiential store over one that's just stacking product. Some good examples would be the Nike House of Innovation in Shanghai. It's been around a while, but it's a great store. And Canada Goose have a very cool store in Toronto. Now, these stores, they don't stock product. It's about the experience of the brand. Now, these are massive brands. And I get that they're able to do that. But the lessons that can be learned are applicable to any retailer who's selling product. Focus, double down on what makes your retail experience important. With regard to the Nike House of Innovation, the actual buying of product is more like getting a souvenir. You go in for the experience, and yes, of course, you leave with plenty of product because it was a great day out. You got some tailor-made trainers, you got some lessons, you got some classes, you got a talk, you got all of these different things, and 5G just adds another element of depth to that experience. So if you're in the store on your app, you've got an AR layer filter over it, you can gamify the experience. There's so much you can do with 5G, which 4G currently kind of comes a little bit short on. So I'm very excited to see 5G become ubiquitous globally, and it's going to be a great time to be in retail if you double down on your technical strategy too.
Wonderful. Thank you, Alan. And so our next question is a little different. So we're going to talk a little bit about adapting quickly, but we're specifically going to be talking about pivoting. So we're going to be talking about pivoting to the new market's needs. And so we had seen a great case with Panera's move to start selling grocery staples. And in the UK, Alan, I know that Signature Brew, who would think that you could take a famed punk rock experience and put it literally in a box and be able to deliver it out? That's been a huge success that brands around the world are watching. So I just wanted to see if y'all had some other examples of brands quickly pivoting their business models to adapt to the current constraints. I know that we've talked about some of the things that the brands here, the stores have done specifically, but with Walgreens and Kroger. But if there's something that you might have missed as far as a really quick pivot, Dave, if you want to jump in. Alan, I'm sure you've got tons of great examples, as well as JP.
Absolutely. So first and foremost, for those watching, I apologize. This is a live event of where you get to see a computer absolutely just nosedive. But I'm privileged and honored to be the CEO and co-founder of a company called Soapbox. Soapbox, before COVID, sold in 140,000 points of distribution throughout the United States, Canada, and Mexico. And we make hand soap, liquid hand sanitizer, body wash, bar soap, shampoo, conditioner, deep conditioner, pretty much the whole gamut. We got a phone call from one of the world's largest coffee maker, and they asked us to make hand sanitizer because we've been in conversations with them for quite some time about rolling out Soapbox's hand soap to all their locations. And we always have it in the pipeline, so we brought it forward. And then the next day we had a call with one of our amazing partners, Wegmans, and they basically said, we were going over how we were going to continue to keep them supplies with liquid hand soap as we started to see COVID coming on. This was the first week of March. And we just casually said, oh, we also make hand sanitizer now. And they were like, oh, cool, we'll take 1 million units. And we were like, excuse me, what? So we're a small company with a big heart. Every time someone buys one of our products, we donate a bar of soap. We've been doing this for 10 years. I used to work for the United States Agency for International Development as a subcontractor, really promoting and focusing and advocating for water, sanitation, and hygiene. So I feel like I've been saying this for 10 years, Linda, where I've just been like, hey, wash your hands for 20 seconds, care about health and hygiene. And now, if there ever was a moment for a social mission-driven brand like ours, to, with the authenticity of having doing this and having given 10 million bars of soap already to local homeless shelters and food pantries throughout the United States, and then really stand up in this moment where it is about hygiene, where it is about taking care of your loved ones, where it is about really focusing on the fundamentals to try to stop the spread of this virus, that's now. So I don't think I've slept for 2 months. My whole team has also been in the same boat. We just have a phenomenal group of people, and we're hiring like crazy. So we've had a very different COVID experience than most others, and we take that with a lot of humility, but we also feel incredibly honored to be able to provide hospitals and nursing homes and our retail partners with products that help people feel safe and stay safe.
It's JP. Can I put in an order of hand sanitizers? Because I can't find any here in Toronto.
So I'm going to break into a little levity. I have never in my life felt like a drug dealer. And for the past 2 months, that is an everyday experience where people are calling, texting, people I haven't talked to for 20 years. Just call me up and be like, hey man, I hear you have this stuff. And I'm like, what? And I think what's also crazy is for those of you who are not experiencing this, you might enjoy this. There's a lot of people who got into PPE, so hand sanitizer, masks, gloves, gowns, that obviously weren't selling this beforehand. And if you see the news articles of where certain states are suing people that claim to have been able to get this and it got held up in whichever country or whatever, all of that is absolutely real. And we as an organization have been on the cutting edge of that. And I think what's so crazy about this whole experience is people will call up, like people who usually don't order hand sanitizer and they need it, or people are trying to sell us, truckloads of ethyl alcohol, whatever it might be. And the language they're using to transact these deals are not normal. Like, so we sell to Harris Teeter and to Wegmans and to Walgreens and CVS and Rite Aid and H-E-B and Associated Food Stores and Meijer and Walmart, and the list goes on. But people have been calling us up and they're like, hey, we're willing to transact this deal and we need 3 truckloads and can you send me proof of life? And I'm like, proof of life? I was like, this is hand sanitizer. Like, we haven't kidnapped anyone. Like, what do you mean proof of life? Like, are you, what? So it is absolutely bizarre. The federal government commandeered one of our tankers. It was going into one of our facilities. We got a call that was like, this isn't yours anymore. And we're like, good. That's, we hopefully believe that is going to people who need it far more than us. And we've almost got frauded. There's crazy. It is absolutely crazy. Yeah, I just took it to 11. You guys were all having a civilized conversation, and Soap Guy over here gets his computer to work, and 700 people collectively are like, "Is this guy real?" Yeah. So,
well, you've got a great name.
Lack of sleep, lots of coffee.
You've got a great name for your company, Soapbox.
Thank you. Much obliged.
I'm sorry, I hear a female voice, but I don't know who that is.
Oh, that's me. Just queuing up Alan. I think he had some answers on this.
Yeah. So so just going back to that was an excellent segue, and I think it's always right to go to 11 where possible. So kudos. I think another example of a brand pivoting product successfully. A good one that came out of China was Oreos. Oreo biscuits. So Wuhan, where the virus originated, is famous for cherry blossom. Oreo launched a cherry blossom flavored biscuit, I don't judge success by sales. I do, but I mostly do it by marketing. So on Weibo, which is Twitter in China, pretty much, it received 54,000 reposts, 6,000 likes, and 3,000 comments in just 11 hours. So great pivoting of creating a new product to reflect a global situation. Just to kind of end on that, not only is it wise to pivot your products and your brands and your identity, but to do it with speed. And I want to stay with Oreo and kind of harken back to the it's always good to dunk in the dark. That is a very famous tweet in marketing circles. It didn't do quite as well as the cherry blossom on Weibo, but on Twitter it did about 15,000 retweets, so pretty good. So I think from, what can you do with your product and your brand? Yes, look for opportunities all the time, CSR opportunities that are mindful of global situations and trends and viral trends, but do it quickly. Don't be afraid to talk about your products and brands, and if you want help, find a partner. There are plenty out there, and just do it. What's there to lose?
Excellent, thank you. And that segues perfectly into our last question. And I'm going to ask that of Amanda. And the question is, no easy task in these times, but where do you feel are the opportunities to continue to surprise and delight your customers?
Well, I think, and I believe it might have been Alan that mentioned this earlier, with some of the insights that they've discovered. But I think right now, especially, what's going to surprise and delight is really showing our customers that we're true, we're genuine, we're trustworthy, and we're really trying to do what's best for their health. And I think that is really going to drive customer loyalty and really kind of strengthen your brand, is really just showing that customer confidence. If them trusting us is going to make them want to come back. So I think that's kind of the big surprise and delight as far as the situation we're kind of going through right now, is just trust and loyalty.
Leader in that regard, as has Walgreens. Maria, I'd love to ask you the same question. Where do you feel like there are the opportunities to continue to really delight your customers amid all of the pandemic and everything that's going on right now?
Yeah, sure. So as you all know, Walgreens is really the neighborhood health, beauty, and retail destination. And approximately 78% of the U.S. population lives within 5 miles of a Walgreens, Duane Reade, or a Rite Aid store. So that really means that our team members, or most of our store team members, live where they work. So taking care of the local community means taking care of their home. So that being said, I do think that, and Amanda also mentioned this, but keeping that personal connection with our customers and making sure we offer an exceptional customer experience when they walk into our stores, listening to what their changings are, and making sure we align with those changes via new services or new offerings, and also staying relevant as retail continues to evolve. I think those will be key moving forward.
Thank you both. I think just the fact that you have stores open throughout this pandemic and you've really, really had to think on your feet, kudos to both of your brands. I'm so impressed with what both of you guys have been able to accomplish through your teams. David, I'll ask you the same question, but I also want to know if you'll get your truck back.
So no, but they did pay a fair price. But I think if it's okay, I'll parlay the question into what I think is going to change with the future, sans vaccine, or even with the vaccine, is that people are going to be far more mindful about their hygiene, about expectations of cleanliness, about expectations of personal space next to strangers. Like, all of these are kind of like obvious conclusions in terms of what society will look like once we come out of this. But I think what's really interesting from our perspective is you're going to see shortages of liquid hand soap, hand sanitizer, certain toilet paper or paper. Like you're going to see that. And I can explicitly just talk about the categories that we really know, which is liquid hand soap and hand sanitizer. You're going to see that for the rest of this year. And I find that so bewildering in a lot of different ways. But if you look at like hand sanitizer, the household penetration of that particular product pre-COVID and after COVID is just night and day. So if you were to say that the household penetration of hand sanitizer was 30%, now it's 95. And not only that, but you're also looking at consumption rates compounding that number. So there's no way that the market is going to be able to get back to where it needs to be on that particular item. And then the crazy thing is, because the amount of people who make soap in the quantities that we do is rather small, we're just hearing that we're not going to be fully back, and other competitors of ours are not going to be fully back in stock, or might be at half capacity even till Q4. So I think in terms of brands, in terms of how planograms are shifting and how shelves are going to look, and what brands are going to be on there, and what that means to the end consumer, like all of 2020, in my opinion, is still very much up in the air. And it is really, really interesting to see how, we're a small little speedboat compared to these gigantic aircraft carriers, which are the multi-billions of revenue conglomerates. And because we're able to buy parts from here and components from here and have labels overnighted from this country to here and there and there, and we don't have 3-4 extra layers in order to go through to do that. It's phenomenal how fast things change on a minute by minute basis, and how that's going to disrupt everything that we knew on shelf.
Excellent. Agility is the name of the game, it seems like. Jean-Pierre, do you want to finish up for us? Your final thoughts on how we can, in this post-COVID world, still continue to delight and surprise our shoppers?
Yeah, so we spent a lot of time talking about the built environment, the physical assets. We talk a lot about technology, but we're often overlooking the human side, the employees, the staff. And we really need to realize that how, during the pandemic and post-pandemic, how we treat our employees, the level of security we give them, the level of training, and the role they're going to play, because it's going to change dramatically. Their role is going to change in retail dramatically. Will play a pivotal role on, what is a good experience and what is a bad experience. And so, training, unfortunately, is the last thing retailers think about. And the first place they cut is staff, retail staff. And I think there's going to have to be a paradigm shift in their mindset, because people go to stores to meet with people, not to interact with technology or not to self-serve. They really want to engage with people. We're social animals. And so the insight is pay attention to your employees. They're instrumental on leveraging growth and brand loyalty.
And they're closest to your customer, and that's always an important thing.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you all. I think we are going to turn to some audience questions now, since we have a lot of them. They're starting to stack up here. As I get ready to read the first question, if you do have a question, just take a look at the bottom of your screen. You'll see a thought bubble. Click on that, and a field will open, and you can just type in your question, and we will get to as many as we possibly can here. The first question is from Justin Johnson of Maverick Concepts. And his question is, do you see retailers integrating pieces within their stores that both serve the purpose of safety, but also support design-forward brand aesthetics? Such an important balance. JP, since you're still on my screen here, do you want to take this one?
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. I'm going to build on Alan. We have an office in Shanghai, so very active. And people say, how is your business? Our business in China is booming. It was slow for a while. It's really picked up because they were impacted the same way we have been in North America. But to answer your question, when we do banks, they have an entire section called convenience. And convenience is about first aid kits. It's canes. It's reading glasses. It's actually providing consumers safety and sanity, assistance for the elderly. They're all those tools. And we're going to see retailers in North America embracing this kind of mindset that understands that customers are coming into built environments with a certain level of anxiety. And we know that consumers shop poorly when they have a high level of anxiety. And so it's going to be really important to create these zones, call it health and safety zone or wellness zone, but things that help those customers feel at ease about the environment they're in. So you're going to see a big growth of that happening in retail North America.
But what comes to mind is Nordstrom New York's flagship, where you can actually use their full service bar while you're shopping for shoes. That may be something that they can use to ease a little bit of anxiety. Linda, you have a question.
Yeah, so I love this question that came in from Kim. And Kim is asking, how are the layout of stores going to change? And specifically, she's asking that, she's saying, we're seeing the temporary measures now, but will the layouts for the experience change permanently? So she wants to know how much of that change is going to be permanent. And then we're going to build on that question a bit and say, how will brands change the way they are presented in stores? How is this changing the way the brands are presented in stores?
So I can kind of start with that. I kind of touched on it earlier, but as far as layout and store design within our store, I don't really see much of that changing. I mean, obviously, providing a little more space when we can, maybe not so much floor shippers and vendor stackouts just to increase, the traffic flow. But one thing that I can see changing and that we actually are already implementing in a few stores is really looking at the need for service cases and versus self-service. There is a certain level of anxiety, especially with the meat industry right now. So looking at maybe a little more prepackaged versus the actual handling and service case of our meat and seafood. I know there are a few stores where just depending on the statistics there that we did end up pulling the service case and going to totally self-service. Now that's not going to be for everywhere, but I think I could see a little bit of a shift in that moving forward. But as far as layout, I don't see that changing dramatically. There's a ton of products that we have to sell and that we need to offer to our customers. So the overall footprint, I don't see changing much.
And I would like to build on what Amanda just said. For us at Walgreens, also, I don't think the layouts need to change as long as we offer optimized assortments that align with what the customers are looking for, and also have a good flow of space to help customers find what they need quickly, since it's a convenience store. I think those will be very helpful. But again, I think the layout is pretty straightforward now and easy to shop, and there's enough space. So I don't see a change there.
Excellent. This next question is for our consumer insights folks. That would be Alan and JP. Obviously, COVID-19 is top of mind for just about everyone in this world at this point. But where does sustainability fit in? Do you think that will take a backseat to this current pandemic, or do you think that that also still remains something that's very important to consumers and shoppers? Alan, if you want to take that one first.
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, sustainability is, is a worthy mantra, and it's something that will continue to be prominent in consumers' minds. As with any kind of pandemic, this isn't the first one the world has been through. It isn't the last. It has to take priority, and coming out of it and reassuring fears. JP touched on, the fact earlier. I've talked a lot about tech, but I've perhaps overlooked the fact that we're all human beings. We all have psychological fears, qualms and worries. And without addressing those for the retail space, we won't see the level of footfall that we saw pre-pandemic. So it's not that sustainability and everything that goes with that will go away. It will take a back seat until all of the issues which have come out of COVID-19 are addressed properly. But as soon as we're back to normal, as soon as all of the elements that help make the shopping experience a safe one, that address all of the psychological needs of the shopper are properly addressed, then sustainability will rightly take its place back in consumers' minds. It shouldn't be ignored, but health and safety is a priority.
Yeah, to build on Alan, I fully agree. But, when we look at sustainability and we look at, optimistic versus pessimistic consumers during the COVID and post-COVID, what we realize is the younger generation, which are the ones driving the sustainability agenda, are actually very optimistic. They're the ones that were the most optimistic during the pandemic, and they're the ones that are going to be the most optimistic coming out of the pandemic. As you get older, you get more pessimistic, and the most recent CPG study we did identifies pessimistic consumers are much more value-driven, more concerned about saving their money. So I think you're going to see kind of a divergent. Sustainability will remain top of mind amongst the younger consumers, and they will be driving the agenda and keeping it relevant. Whereas the older consumers who are concerned about, sustaining the, retirement and sustaining their funds and keeping their jobs, they will be much more value-driven. You're going to see a major second wave ripple effect of consumers looking for value. We saw it in our CPG study, this emergence of a value-driven consumer. So if you're a national brand, watch out. They're going to be shifting to private label. And so you really need to look at this as two worlds on similar tracks, but going in different directions.
JP, that's a really good segue, because talking about how consumers are kind of changing their behavior and kind of talking about how CPGs need to kind of look at the way that they're talking with their brands to kind of retain that customer loyalty, it is an interesting dilemma. And I'm wondering if, we're looking at, definitely new product trial by, consumers, shoppers in the stores, but we're also looking again at shoppers going through the store a little bit differently. Even if layouts are the same, they're still maybe having a slightly different store experience. And I wonder, if we can kind of go back to Kim's question, if you had some insights on how brands are changing the way that, they are presented in store, are talking about changing. I guess we might be a little bit too early in this to really say what brands have done as far as change the way they present in stores, but maybe what you've heard from your clients about how they're thinking about changing the way they present in stores now.
Well, I think the biggest challenge is to keep in stock. So the vulnerability of brands is that the consumers in our study identified that if their preferred brand is out of stock, they're not going to wait or go to another store. They're going to buy the next brand or the cheapest brand. They were going to migrate to private label. And so that's a big shift from a post-pandemic. So that's number one. Number two is that I come back to social responsibility. Consumers, what's really important is not pack format or, multi-packs because, they're pantry loading. What's really important is that these brands support their communities through social programs, that they're visible in the community, supporting healthcare workers, supporting those in need. That is pivotal, and that's right across all age groups. So if you're going to do one thing, right, during the pandemic and post-pandemic, is be visible in your community, supporting them. That's really, really important. It's unbelievable how that scored in our study. It almost scored as much as safety.
And just to dovetail off that, I think one of the things that we've seen is, and it's funny because during this meeting on our company Slack channel, someone sent me how one of our hand sanitizers are being displayed in one of our retail partners. And it looks like what happened is they opened a couple master cases and just put it into a shopping cart and then push the shopping carts in front of each one of the registers. So any brand manager, including ours, is just like smacking her head right now, basically saying like, this is the worst presentation ever. And all of us are like, it really doesn't matter. You know, as JP just said, the product on the shelf right now is going to win. And I think what's really interesting in what we're seeing, specifically just talking about hand sanitizers, because it's basically all I've been doing for 2 months, is going from something that was a adjacent category to the rest of personal care, and kind of an in-between the first aid category and the personal care category, and now being something that pretty much every news program that you tuned into for, and still is, talked about the importance of either washing your hands or having hand sanitizer. It's just completely changed. And the consumer expectation of so many different aspects of it, of price, of scent, of just has gone out the window. It's just it's a necessity, and it's something that in the consumer's eye is life-saving. So being on shelf is everything. And I think for you know, they like to call us a challenger brand, but really that's just saying we're smaller than most other brands. For us, it's an opportunity. If you're on shelf, you get to trade that consumer over to your brand. And if you have a great product performance, then it's a sampling opportunity by just being the only thing in stock.
Definitely. It's kind of understanding that your value proposition and what you're offering is a little bit different. You know, understanding that as a brand, maybe the most important thing to communicate is that I'm available. And so it's a really great point to bring up, Dave. And I wanted to actually, all of you guys have had really great points. So I want to thank the whole expert panel for sharing their insights today. I want to thank the audience for some awesome questions. They're very thoughtful and encouraging. So lots of love for you, Dave, during your with the unusual language and that's going on with your procurement. People reaching out to you. And I also want to kind of reach out and kind of give a big thank you to our sponsors. They're Acrylic Source, Build, COG, King Retail Solutions, Linron, Moss, and UFO. So without these guys, this free event wouldn't be possible. So please return their support by visiting their websites. And on behalf of our speaker, us moderators, Jen and I, and the rest of the BXP and VMSD Magazine staffs, I would like to thank you for your time today and hope the insights shared will help your brands and stores succeed in the new reality.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.